It being after 7 and most people being here, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll start as usual with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and welcome to the September meeting of the Union Township Planning Commission. We've just had Pledge of Allegiance, so I'll ask for the roll call, please.
Cody.
Here.
Squattrito.
Here.
Milky.
Here.
Fuller is here. Darren.
Here.
Shingles.
Here.
Buckley.
Here.
Webster.
Here.
LaBelle.
Here.
Okay, thank you. So we last met August 21st. That was our regular August meeting. You have the minutes from August 21st. Are there any corrections, additions, etc. to the August 21st minutes? I had a question on page 2, the two comments at the top of the page. Is that an autocorrect? She for? I don't know what that was.
She's for survey.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be Shea for Builders.
Shea Force was the surveying company.
Or,
Yeah.
How is that spelled?
Shea, I
I
don't
think
think
it's,
it's
Shea-
I
like
think
that.
it's SCHAFOUR.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Be my best guess.
Okay, so it was an autocorrect.
Yeah.
All right.
I had a question in regards to, and on page 1, we talk about under the SPA 2018-01. First, we talk about the the Riverwood accessory building and amended access drive, but then under public comment, we commented on the approval of a road. Do you see that? So in one place we call it an access drive, then in another place it's an approval of a road. Is it really approval of an access drive? It's not a road, is it? Do you see the attorney talked about the road, and it's like, okay, it's not gonna be a road. Is it gonna be a drive, an access drive? So I didn't know whether that was important. When in one place we call it a drive, and one place it's a road.
Okay, so noted. We can, I'm sure we can adjust that. It is an access drive. Other comments on the August 21st minutes? So we'll get the actual name of the survey company, and then we'll make sure that we're consistent in our use of access drive for the description of that project. Anything else? If not, since we've made some slight changes, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as modified.
So moved.
The motion is by Webster. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Cody. Further discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes with those slight changes, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we have our minutes. Correspondence / board reports. Any correspondence, Peter? That's not like related to something we're actually doing? Oh, okay. So board reports. Anything from the Board of Trustees?
We approved the SUP 2018-07 on the mini storage on the condition the site plan is approved. But the Board of Trustees wanted to make sure that we emphasize on the lighting and the screening to make sure on the adjacent residential homes, just make sure we overlook everything, double check everything.
Okay. Anything else? Any questions for Lisa? Okay. Zoning Board of Appeals?
Nothing to report. We didn't meet this month. We're actually meeting tomorrow night. Special meeting.
Okay. Is it a hot agenda?
Text interpretation.
Okay. So everybody will be wearing their glasses and.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything sidewalks and pathways? Anything new?
The only thing is that there's gonna meeting on Tuesday, the 25th, and that's all I have.
Okay. Any questions for sidewalks and pathways or ZBA? Any other reports? That's the ones we typically do. Okay, so we'll move on. So next item is approval of agendas. We have an agenda with 3 business items on it. Peter will update us as we get to each one as to where each one stands. Are there any other items that need to come before us tonight that anyone's aware of? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda so that we can proceed with it.
So moved.
Motion is by Shingle, second by Fuller to approve the agenda as prepared. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We have our agenda. Public comment. This is the portion of the meeting where we invite members of the public to address the Planning Commission on any item that's not on tonight's agenda. There will be a public hearing later on, so if you're here to talk to us about the public hearing, we'll have that later on. So this is for any items that are not on tonight's agenda. We just ask you to give us your name and address for the minutes and address your comments to the commission and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Public hearing, public comment is open at 7:09. And since our audience is rigidly stationary, we will assume that no one is going to talk to us right now, and so we'll go ahead and close that back up. So we're ready to move on to new business. We have 3 items. The first item is the site plan review for 2018-07 Mission Road Mini Storage, 5353 South Mission, DeShano Development. This is the one that was just referred to in that last month we recommended a special use permit, which was granted, and which now we have the site plan, which the special use permit approval was contingent on a site plan being approved. So I'll turn to Peter if there's anything you would like to say by way of introduction to this, and just let us know where it stands.
So as the clerk, Lisa Cody, indicated from the Board of Trustees, the recommendation to approve special use permit for the 3 additional self-storage units was approved on the condition that a site plan review be approved. And so that's what brings us to today for a site plan review. At our last meeting, we had part of a site plan review ready to be approved, but there were items missing. Since that time, we have received all approvals from all outside agencies. I have approval from the Mount Pleasant Fire Department. I have approval from the Drain Office for stormwater management. We have approval from the Isabella County Road Commission. We have approval from Township Utilities, and we also have approval from the Isabella County Transportation Commission. So we have all of our outside agency approvals. We also have modifications made that were required to the plan. We have elevation drawings that we did not have at the time. Those have been included. We have a lighting plan showing the lighting to be in conformance with the township lighting ordinance. So it's a photometrics page. And we also have a page showing sidewalks as proposed required by the sidewalk ordinance across the property. Please note that the applicant has indicated on the site plan that they are requesting a waiver from the construction of those sidewalks per the sidewalk ordinance, but they have shown them as required part of the sidewalk ordinance on the plan. So at this moment, in my memo, I had recommended that we would approve the site plan on the condition that all outside agencies and and missing items have been satisfied. Those have been satisfied. We can go through any other questions or items that the Planning Commission has. And as always, I'm here to answer any questions. You should have a copy with you of the sidewalk waiver, or excuse me, relief of sidewalk construction policy that you will have to go over in your consideration when granting the relief from sidewalk construction in accordance with our sidewalk ordinance and sidewalk policy.
Okay. You didn't make copies of those for us, did you, or did you?
I was hoping that I could have it over on the projector for you. I can make copies of the updated, what you don't have. You should,
I
or we
mean,
can give you the
maybe
whole
we-
thing.
Maybe we can pass them
These are
around.
very difficult to review a
Right.
site plan on this.
Okay.
I have some extra copies here, but it's helpful.
But so if I can make copies, and if you have any questions for myself or the applicant.
Well, we normally give the applicant an opportunity to at least make a statement and then stand for questions. So, is there anything you'd like to say at this point, or just stand for questions?
Yes, no, I'm certainly here to answer any questions that you have, and I don't really have any comments. I the copies of the site plan if you need it, but
Okay. Well, yeah, the pages in our packet were on the small side, but if anyone does have any questions in relation to this, they're building 3 buildings, one in the right in the center of the existing buildings, and then 2 behind. So you mentioned that there's additional detail on the lighting.
Yep, there's
Do
included
you
in the
want
photometrics
to
page.
describe?
The photometrics page shows that no, well, less than 1 foot candle. And actually, I think in the photometrics page, it shows quite considerably less than 1 foot candle. I would be crossing the property line. Lights will be down shielded. And so that meets the standards of the lighting ordinance. The Planning Commission, or excuse me, the Board of Trustees did, as Clerk Cody reported back, asked this body to, I know we looked at it before when we reviewed the special use permit, but to give emphasis of consideration on lighting, screening. The plan meets what is required, but if this body were to feel that there's a need for more restrictive lighting or more restrictive screening, the Board of Trustees made comments to take consideration of that. They emphasized that when approving the special use permit. It does meet screening. It does meet the lighting.
Okay. Could I ask Commissioner Cody, because when we discussed this, my recollection was that based on what was behind, based on what was to the south and to the north and so on, it seemed like that was a fairly isolated spot. There were some trees to the south that were between them and the next house down. Behind is just open field, and to the north, I think, was just open field. Are they concerned about, were people at the board concerned about any particular direction with regard to screening?
I'm thinking they were talking about Wing Road where it's like up higher and
That's what
when
I'm-
you look down, it blocks the view of like the city and
Okay.
And aren't there houses to the south?
Yes.
There's a road that goes, can you bring that up?
East.
south also.
It's not connected.
Not gonna,
Quite a distance,
Yeah, it's quite a ways.
and there's, seems to be woods. It is,
And so the Planning Commission, or the Board of Trustees, their concerns were residents on Wing Road. I was at the meeting, those were the comments that I heard.
And I think if they continue the fence as the current
Couple
design,
400 or 500
it
feet, I
should be
don't think.
very restrictive. You're not gonna see much of the building, you're gonna see maybe the roofs
Mhm.
of the new buildings, but
And certainly the lighting, would indicate from the foot candles that nothing is going to go beyond the property lines. So the lights aren't going to go into somebody else's property. If I understand the lighting,
And I don't
document that
remember
we
if
have.
you had the concern about people driving in there and shining lights
No,
across the field, but either way,
Yeah.
somebody
I
had
think
that
that was
concern.
one of the
And I
concerns
think
that
the
they said.
fence design would take care of any internal traffic.
That was my understanding for it too.
What type of fence is that that's proposed?
Just a commercial woven fence.
Okay, just a security fence, it's not a wood fence.
But you said it's woven, so it's screened, it's blocked.
It's not really, no, it's not really a screen fence, it's, because again, there's nothing to the east, or everything's like a quarter mile away. Just a regular commercial fence.
So like a steel, kind of like hurricane fence, whatever they call them.
Headlights would show through.
Headlights would
Oh,
show
wood.
through.
But, there's nothing that they would shine at. Somebody pulling in, all the buildings are on the south and on the east, and so they're all blocking the headlights until you get to the very eastern part of the property, and then the headlights will be shining to the east, and that's like a quarter mile or half a mile of field out, shines out toward the expressway.
It seems like, from the public meeting that we had had, public comment was that, wasn't there some folks from along the south? Is that, that's not Wing on the south side?
yes,
That is Wing.
yes.
Isn't that where the concern had come from? Was it Wing
Yes,
Road?
that's
I-
where I
Yeah.
recall.
Their backyards are,
But
What will be the hours of operation?
Well, there are no limited hours. We have a gate, so you have a code to punch in, and the chain link fence is, the only area that lights would shine through would be if you got to the extreme eastern part of the property. And the really would shine at the residences, which are southeast, but they're up, way up on a hill. They're up there another, oh gosh, about 30, 40 feet above, so the elevation of this property and a quarter mile away.
I have a question. So currently you have 6 rectangular buildings and you have 4 L-shaped buildings. I've been to the property 2 or 3 times, but I've never been inside because I don't have a code. So, do cars currently drive around to the east side of the L-shaped buildings? In other words, are there entrances on that side or are there
No,
only?
they only drive to the west side of those buildings.
Okay. What about the new buildings?
The new buildings will be on the east side, and those cars will drive to the eastern part of the property.
Okay, so it is a little bit the traffic pattern will be a little bit different.
Correct.
Okay.
So they will be turning either north or south at some point.
Yeah.
Flashing headlights.
Yeah.
But there's a field to the north, and, I mean, the houses to the south are quite
Yeah.
a ways away, so,
The field to the south, north and east, virtually, it's all,
yeah.
it's all farmland, quite a long, probably a quarter mile.
yeah, except what's zoned there for future, not zoned, but the future land use map is neighborhood service. So what you could see in the future is development there that's neighborhood service type properties, right?
Commercial.
Yeah, light commercial. Office space, that kind of stuff. So, only reason I bring that up is I want you to think it's a field now, but the future plan for that in the master plan is for it to be essentially neighborhood service, which is OS and B4, I believe.
That's to the northeast,
That's to the north and the south.
north and south.
Yeah, that corridor, in fact, is, in the master plan is, it's not all zoned that way, but it, future land use shows office, light business.
So then therefore, there's no concern about residential in regards to,
I would say not to the north, no,
and to the south.
other than what's existing.
Right, so
Correct.
we don't have that zone, so,
Well,
or
yeah.
the future, so that you would have residential along Mission between the storage and Main Road.
Regarding the future land use. However,
Correct.
it's currently zoned AG to the north and to the south. So technically, you could build a residence on that with current zoning. So the zoning doesn't meet the future land use. I was just trying to lift up future land use as part
Future
of the,
land.
yes.
What was it that you were referring to?
Future land use
For the
is,
current parcel?
no, to the north and south. That corridor is neighborhood service. Guess I looked it up wrong.
Okay.
I just wanted to point that out because that should be part of our thought process when we're talking about screening and lighting, et cetera. I would think residence is where the screening is most important, and I was trying to
Right, we
point
want
out.
screen between OS and B4.
Right.
Well, I'm satisfied with the lighting requirement and the screening shown here. Gonna make a recommendation, we approve special use site plan review 2018-07.
I'll second.
So there was a motion by Fuller to approve the site plan, and the second was by Cody. Further discussion?
Do we need to talk about the sidewalk?
That's what I was gonna bring up too.
Yeah, great minds, you know.
Yes, we do need to talk about the sidewalk. So on the first page of the large copies that were just handed out, under sidewalk ordinance, there is the requested relief from the sidewalk ordinance, and if it was really small before I managed to read it, but it was tiny before. Now it's readable. Give people a second to have a look at that.
I can read it, just so everybody, the applicant has stated requirements: 4-foot wide sidewalk located 1 foot inside right-of-way line. Requested relief from the sidewalk ordinance. Required sidewalk would be located within an existing ditch inside the Isabella County Road Commission right-of-way of South Mission Road, and would require significant regrading work and drainage runoff control upgrades. Relocation of the ditch is not practical, as the site is already developed at the right-of-way property line with an existing fence installed just inside the property line between the road, side ditches, and existing stormwater management ponds. All other existing properties do not currently have any sidewalks or paths to promote pedestrian traffic. However, there is an existing, recently constructed 8-foot wide asphalt path on the other side of Mission Road.
If I could provide a friendly amendment, it is that would approve the request for relief on grounds that it's, first of all, it's not on a designated street that we have identified within our sidewalk ordinance, and it appears, again, he does not address this, but there doesn't seem to be any evidence of any road, any car pedestrian accidents along that road. Less than 50% of the surveyed section of the area does not have sidewalks, as indicated in our criteria for consideration. And because of this grading, without having the evidence, and certainly you can provide that, is that the sidewalk construction is likely going to exceed 50% of the actual cost of the project. And I'm making that assumption just because of the grading that needs to be done and the movement of the ditch and so forth, that it's going to be 50%. So looking at our criteria. for consideration.
And just to give everybody background on Denise's friendly amendment, what she's referring to is Part 2 or Section 2 of our Sidewalk Pathways Prioritization Committee's policy that was adopted by the Board of Trustees. It states criteria for granting relief of sidewalk construction. Parcels not identified on a designated street may be granted provisional relief of sidewalk construction if any of the following conditions apply. 1, the development is located on a property zoned industrial. It is not, one does not qualify. Number 2, the development is located on an unimproved road.
Peter, can you define unimproved road?
I believe it was a paved road.
Paved is- okay.
It is on a paved road. Number 2 does not apply. Number 3, the development is located on property with road frontage where no car, pedestrian injury or fatality due to the need of the pedestrian to walk in the roadway has occurred for a distance of 1 mile in either direction of the development. A car or pedestrian accident within 1 mile of area provided relief from building the sidewalk will require sidewalk construction within 1 year. Number 3 does not apply to this parcel. Number 4, less than 50% of the surveyed sections of the township, along with the road fronting the proposed development, has sidewalks. If on a corner lot, the mile will extend in both directions along with the frontage roads. Once the threshold has been met, all parcels will be required to construct sidewalks within 1 year. Number 4 does apply to this case. Number 5, if the cost of sidewalk construction exceeds more than 50% of the total cost of the project. That one, it may possibly, I'm not sure, we could ask the applicant. But those are the 5 criteria, and it states if any of the following conditions apply, provisional relief of sidewalk construction could be granted.
Sidewalk would have to be built over the existing ditch, and it's a great new walkway, just constructed right across the road.
Okay,
All the way to Shepherd.
thank you. Brian?
So, as I read the sidewalk, what do we call this thing? Is there an official name for this?
Is the
Probably the relief, sidewalk relief.
Okay. As I read that, in the definitions, relief is defined as to eliminate the required construction of a sidewalk as shown in the site plan. That I could not support. Provisional relief, as defined by section 2, we're allowed to give provisional relief. It doesn't say we're allowed to give relief, correct?
Correct, it means it.
But what we've been discussing and in the motion was relief, and this is asking for relief, not provisional relief. I want to clear that,
It would be
because this-
provisional relief.
but it wasn't stated like that. That's why I'm clarifying it, because I can't support relief, but I could support provisional relief.
Nothing's
Because-
been accepted by the mover and the seconder yet, so
Oh, I
we're
thought
still
you did.
discussing. I didn't
No,
hear it.
Oh.
it was not even proposed.
It,
from what I-
it was proposed by Denise. I just went off on my explanation to
Oh,
give
okay.
everyone background of what she was proposing, where she was getting the criteria from.
But we do
I
need
think
that
it needs to be understood from the sidewalk is that all these are provisional, because if anything happens, so therefore, I understand what the applicant is asking, but from the Sidewalk and Pathways Committee, is that all applicants, if this is occurring, we would give provisional relief, because if anything changes, we would call, just as we do now, we would say, oh, you now have to construct sidewalks. So it would be a provisional relief.
But that's not how it is defined in the plan, and when you gave your amendment, you said relief, not provisional relief.
My mistake, I should try to add
Okay,
the word
and that's where my
provisional.
sticking point was. I
That's fine.
wanted to be clear, because this is a corridor that, as I mentioned earlier in the plan, is slated to be commercial, and someday we'll likely have to have sidewalks there.
Just to clarify, I think, so the policy is clear to everyone. Section 2 is not titled provisional relief, and then there's a section for non-provisional relief. Section 2 is titled criteria for granting relief of sidewalk construction. It later uses parcels not identified on a designated street may be granted provisional relief.
That was my point.
Yeah, in the definitions of relief, it's clear to let you know what relief is. and then what provisional means. The reason why provisional was defined is because when this board, if this board gives provisional relief, then it defines what that means. So when we go through our criteria, if they're asking, I mean, the way I got the policy is if they ask for relief, they're ultimately asking for a provisional relief.
That's not how I interpret
Yeah,
the language
I would
here.
interpret they're asking for complete relief.
Yes.
They never
because
have to do it, which.
Relief
I
is
agree
defined
with Brian
separately.
that-
Well, they can ask for whatever they want, but it's
Right.
up to us to decide what to
Decide that
grant.
we're allowed to grant provisional relief, not relief.
I can tell you that from the Sidewalk and Pathways Committee, it's always a provisional relief. It was never a full, never ever again when you have to do sidewalks, it is a provisional relief. If in fact that, because that word is not there, we can go back to the Sidewalks and Pathways Committee and make sure that it's very clear that it's all associated with provisional relief. Any applicant that comes in is provisional, because if anything changes in the future, they would be required to construct sidewalks. That was the intent.
I understand that's the intent, but the language,
Okay, so what I'm saying, Commissioner Melky, is that's the intent as the person who sits on the Sidewalk and Pathways Committee. And if in fact, as we are now using that, if it's not clear, we would go back to the Sidewalks and Pathways Committee and ask for the amendment to make sure that it's clear for future
yeah,
use.
and that's reasonable.
Yes.
I'm just saying on the plans now, it says relief, it doesn't say provisional.
Well,
And if
and-
this were to go to court, I could argue that the two are different. And that
Well-
and if we're gonna motion to provide relief, that's different than providing provisional relief.
Roman numeral 2 says criteria for granting relief of sidewalk construction, but then immediately below that, it says parcels not identified on a designated street may be granted provisional relief if any of the following conditions apply.
Right, and
So
all
that's
I'm
the
asking, we should be talking about provisional relief.
Yeah. Don't disagree.
Just
Brian,
the
did you?
amendment, and I think you said, I stand
Provisional
correct, yeah,
relief.
thank you. That's what I was trying to get at.
All right.
Can I amend my motion?
Yeah, so you're just gonna, perfect.
I'd like to make the motion to approve site plan review 2018, granting the applicant provisional relief from the sidewalk construction standard.
Second.
Okay, so the motion has been amended as stated, and the original seconder seconded it again, so we'll take that as a acceptance of the amendment to the motion. Commissioner Buckley.
Well, without opening another can of worms, I just want to make a point in reading the policy. I agree with Commissioner Webster on item number 4, less than 50% of the surveyed sections of the township, blah, blah, blah. I disagree with number 5, that it's within our purview to estimate what the project costs or the sidewalk costs would be. If we were going to use that provision either today, which we're not, or in the future, I think it would be incumbent upon the applicant to demonstrate the cost rather than us to speculate on it. So I'm just pointing that out right now for future use.
I would agree.
Okay. It's probably worth, I mean, as we do these things, it's probably worth noting which of the conditions we're assuming applies, and so we're assuming number 4 applies.
I would suspect number 3 does apply as well, but we don't have that evidence. So then therefore, for future, is the applicant should also then provide that evidence that there has been no car pedestrian within the last year along the roadway, as well as the cost, if we're going to use those two in regards to the criteria. Then the applicant would have to be very clear that that's, we could,
Yeah.
I personally, with number 3, I have my own personal concerns with that because I think it's, number 1, difficult to verify from an applicant what has happened. Number 2, I don't personally think it's good policy for us to wait for a serious injury or fatality to determine whether or not we need sidewalks or accessible plans. But the point is taken. Some sort of proof should be demonstrated if we're going to rely on it.
Just for my own communication, when I'm talking with the applicants in the future, We want to have them specify if they're seeking relief, that they actually use the term provisional relief, and that, looking at numbers 1 through 5, if they're going to ask for that provisional relief, to choose which, one or all, and then provide the necessary documentation to back up that claim.
I would agree.
Certainly be helpful to us, I think. All right. So the motion on the floor is to approve the site plan with the understanding that the applicant is being granted provisional relief on the sidewalk. Are there any conditions besides that? I didn't hear any.
Unmentioned and noted.
Okay. Further discussion?
I'm not gonna attempt another condition, but I would only say to the applicant that if, in the spirit of neighborliness, if you choose to plant some evergreens along that east side, I'm sure that your neighbors would appreciate it.
Others? Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? All right. Okay, so we will move on. The next item is site plan amendment 2018-01, Riverwood Storage Building. This is amending site plan review 2017-08, which we approved last fall, I believe. 1239 East Bloomfield Road. And once again, I will ask Peter to update us on the up-to-the-minute status of this, because there was some question about whether it was complete or not.
So we had this item last month before us under correspondence. It was information at that point. There were items missing. Since that time, the applicant has worked to satisfy the requirements and provide any missing documentation. At this time, I do have approvals from the Mount Pleasant Fire Department. I have approval from the Stormwater Manager, from the Isabella County Drain Commission for stormwater management. I have approval for utilities from the Township Utility Department, and I also have approval from the Isabella County Transportation Commission. With respect to the Isabella County Road Commission, I do have approval from Pat Gaffney, who we rely on for approval. What is drawn on the plan is not exactly the way Pat wants it drawn. In the time that we've had, they were able to, in the document that you have before you titled C1, you have the access drive, you have the driveway opening, and so that is the way that Pat wanted the drawing shown. He hasn't looked at this since that drive has been put on there, or the driveway opening. There was also one other correction that I have forwarded from Pat's comments to the engineer to make, located in another spot. Pat's approval, he's fine with the approval as long as these changes are made, and this is how it's built. So at this time, I would recommend that we approve the site plan on the condition that the road commission be given a final version of what they expected to have drawn, and that they give their approval. The other item that was missing that we do have is before you, titled C4, page C4, that shows a 4-foot sidewalk as required, shown across the entire distance of the property, from property line to property line. And so that was not on the plan before. The reason for the amendment is when we approved this site plan in October of 2017, we approved it with access to the storage building from the existing parking lot at Riverwood Resort. The applicant, and we also approved that plan with the construction of sidewalks across the entire property. Since that time, the applicant has come back and asked for amendment for, one, a new access drive. This access drive, of course, will be located directly from Broomfield Road. There will no longer be an access from the parking lot of Riverwood to the storage building. And the applicant is also asking for relief from sidewalk construction that was required as part of their October site plan approval. I do want to note that due to PC Planning Commission bylaws that we have adopted since the last time we met with this issue in October of last year, it would require 3 of our members, Commissioner LaBelle, Commissioner Milkey, and Commissioner Webster, to recuse themselves from discussion and voting on this issue, given that they live within 300 feet of the subject property. Other than that, if there's any other questions, I can answer.
So what's the protocol on that? Do they step away from the table? Do they remain seated and just keep their mouths quiet?
Yeah, I don't see a reason why they'd have to leave. They just can't take part in the discussion, any kind of debating, and ultimately cast a vote. So if I guess I'd leave it to you, the chair, if you feel that, you know, if they were to sit out in the audience or not, but it's up to the board.
We've done it both ways. We've had people actually themselves choose to leave the table and either go out into the hallway or go out into the audience. We've also had situations where people have not done that. Commissioner Buckley?
I would only suggest that as residents, they do have the right to sit in and listen to a meeting if they'd like to sit in the audience.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have a strong feeling? I mean, I'm confident that these individuals can contain themselves and just sit and listen and so on, but
May I ask a question?
please.
So because they're excusing themselves from this duty, are they now a citizen and can, well, I guess there's not public comment, well, will they be able to say anything as an informed citizen?
Well, it's not a public hearing.
Public hearing.
And I normally try to be limited in recognizing folks who aren't directly involved in the process. I don't know the answer to the question from a legal standpoint, but
Well, I mean, typically, as you stated, we don't have any public hearing. We've gone past the public comment. We do have a second public comment at the end of the meeting. So typically, we don't have, when it's a site plan, we typically don't invite the public to make comment. So.
Okay, that answers my question.
I think the question is, are they going to sit here or there?
I can sit quietly.
I'm okay with that.
I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, so.
I'll step away.
Okay. All right, so we will proceed. So Peter has introduced the topic. I think I would like to, without objection, give the applicant an opportunity to briefly present their application, and then we'll discuss it. So.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Michael Hackett, and I'm an attorney representing Riverwood. Thank you for your minutes here. And actually, it was very interesting to be part of the meeting because you already discussed a major issue that's going to be part of this application. One, there are 2 parts to our request for an amendment, and the first part has to do with the drive. When the original plan was submitted, there was a drive that squirreled from the parking lot across what is currently used as the driving range, over to the area where the building was constructed. So I have a drawing here. The drive ran from this area across to the area where this the maintenance building is constructed. The maintenance building is approximately 600 feet back from Broomfield Road. It is our proposal that we use the area along the east property line for an access drive. This is not going to be open to the public. This is a maintenance shed. We're going to keep our equipment here. I put two little flags, one here for the new building. The old building was over here, and that building unfortunately burned a little over a year ago. So it was necessary that we construct this building. We put it over in the area to the very east. The access drive, again, not open to the public. We're expecting that we will use it minimally, specifically that we're not even expecting that there will be regular parking there for employees. However, we need to get in and service things like the mowers and excavators and so on that are being held there. I would suggest that this access drive is very reasonable and should readily be approved. And we've been in negotiation with the road commission about the construction of the access itself and how that is going to take place. And so I've had no less than 4 or 5 meetings now with Pat Gaffney at the road commission. I am going to suggest to you that the access drive is an easy one. It will have no effect or minimal effect on Broomfield Road. It will have no effect on the appearance out at the road. The construction maintenance building, as I said, is quite a distance back from the road. Do you have questions about this particular issue before I go to the sidewalk issue?
And the road commission is concerned about this drive, are they gonna maintain it, or are they, I would think the fire department would be more concerned about the design of the drive.
The fire department has approved this, and we put in a hitch right here, so that fire vehicles can turn around and get in and out there. We're in negotiations with the road commission to have them actually build the access entrance, the apron, for us, with other things that we're doing with the road commission. Okay. And that's been a part of our discussion with Pat Gaffney and Tony Caselli.
Well, that helps me to understand what's taken so long.
Sure,
from
sure. There are not objections to this access by the road commission. Okay. Anything else about
Commissioner
the
Buckley,
drive?
did you have a question?
A couple questions. First question, is there a reason, I mean, is there a rationale why the service drive is being changed? I didn't hear the actual rationale why we're changing it from the parking lot to the Broomfield Road.
After we got into the construction, we realized that this was much, much more efficient than coming across the driving range area. At a point in time when they commenced construction of the building, there was a recognition that that was effectively going to eliminate the driving range altogether. The driving range is still in effect, in use. It's just that you have to wedge it down a bit. You know,
Sure.
you can't hit a 300-yard drive because it's going to get over onto that drive. This building would actually be in range for where the driving range was. So, long story short, it was truly a change in plans, and there were several things that became apparent as we were about construction, in the course of construction.
Okay.
Okay.
Given the infrequency of use, is there any intent to put a gate at the end of that drive or anything like that?
We don't really believe that it's necessary.
Okay.
It's gonna be a dirt drive.
Yeah.
Or gravel as opposed to paved. So it's not gonna be something that would, one, invite the public in the first place, and two, no, we haven't considered putting a gate there. Again, extra expense that we don't know that we really need. This activity is within 50 feet of the edge of the golf course property, and is certainly not going to be confused with the access to the bowling alley, recreation area, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay?
What is the distance between that new service road and Green Acres and that service road and the main entrance, because you got two entrances to the resort off of Broomfield? The main entrance and then the entrance to the housing.
The service road is approximately 600 feet from the easterly access into the bowling alley, okay? And so if I use my scale, we're approximately 600 feet away. Green Acres backs up against the tree line here, and so it is within 100 feet. I mean, the back end of these lots is within a relatively close distance to the access drive.
And there was no issues with the road commission that there would now be 4 potential access roads on the Broomfield. One being within 100 feet, then obviously 600, and I don't know the distance between the entrance to the bowling center and the entrance to the golf. But obviously, when we start talking about exiting at the same time, that puts traffic on the Broomfield all at the same time, potentially. People trying to get out of the subdivision. It's not done.
Sure. My response is, after the discussions with Mr. Gaffney, the answer is no. They didn't have any concerns about that proximity to the entrance to Green Acres versus or next to the service drive. And of course, even the drawing, I think, may end up being a little bit misleading, because this is not going to be a great big wide road. It's simply a driveway, one lane driveway to get back to the building. Okay.
But it does indeed exit and enter off of Broomfield.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Just a couple of questions
Sure.
on this before we move on. What kinds of vehicles are actually going to be using that?
We expect to pick up trucks, and on occasion, we may have to have a truck with a trailer to haul in a piece of equipment, whether it's the mowers or a tractor that is being used on the golf course itself.
Mm.
The maintenance shed is where we're going to keep our equipment.
Mm.
And the equipment for the golf course includes tractors, mowers, and a number of handheld things, some of which would require a trailer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll ask this part first and then the other part. If this is going to be an unpaved driveway, any concern with dust, or if this thing is, eventually those sorts of things get ruts in them and so on, and you've got a vehicle, noise and dust, because you got the houses right behind you?
The amount of use that this drive is gonna get, is so limited that, again, we're not parking cars back there, we don't have, all of our employees, at the golf course parking there. They are working out of the cart shed, and the pro shop and so on. And so they're all over here, in the parking area. So, dust issues, and noise, I suggested those are gonna be absolutely minimal. And they, will obviously be taking care of the road so that it's accessible, but at the same time, we're not expecting that it would be, one, something that we would be paving, and two, it's not something that is gonna involve 2 cars an hour, 10 cars an hour kind of thing. It just isn't, there's no place to go back here, right? I mean, all they're doing is coming off the road and going to the maintenance shed, and that's not a clubhouse.
Can one assume that there probably would be relatively little of that going on after dark?
We get out there early in the morning, and so there'd be, again, minimal activity in the mornings, and yes, you could assume that there would be very little use after dark.
Okay. And then lastly, just from I guess from a safety standpoint and also just in general, this model requires you to go back onto Broomfield, whereas the previous one did not. Any concern with the fact that you have to, when you're pulling your trailer and you're moving your equipment around, that you have to go back onto a relatively heavily traveled road as opposed to staying entirely within your property when you're moving your equipment around? Was there any consideration given to that?
Well, recognize that the access that was a part of the original plan came off Broomfield also.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no, we don't see any difference there. Number two, we're not expecting that we're gonna be hauling a mower out onto Broomfield and taking it down onto the Blue Nine. That the equipment that's here is all gonna run out onto the golf course. And so it's not a matter of daily or hourly hauling a piece of equipment over so that it can access the one of the other nines.
So that type of equipment to some extent will move around within the property, go back to the shed, go out, go back to the shed, go out. It won't be carted around to be used elsewhere.
Absolutely. And of course we have paved cart paths across the entire course.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how they're getting there back and forth now, is that once that equipment gets on the property, it's not leaving unless it has to be hauled off to the maintenance.
So this is more for when they need maintenance, or you're getting a new piece of equipment that's being delivered, or
That's
those
right.
sorts of things.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions, since I've been kind of monopolizing this?
Just to verify, I'm sure it's probably been covered, but being that it's a dirt road, the fire department has signed off on that dirt road will be able to handle 50,000-pound or greater trucks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, there's a strong base there. This is not lowland. I would describe it as clay base with some sand, and we will build it up so that it certainly is going to be able to handle a vehicle. But there isn't any issue with the fire department or the capability of being able to get out onto the turnaround or into the area of the maintenance shed.
Okay.
After suffering a fire, you think about those things.
Yeah. Right.
You know, this was really a tragedy to lose all the equipment last years ago.
Any other questions just about the drive? Okay.
Okay, thank you. The second item that we're asking for an amendment to is a request for relief regarding the sidewalk. And I was glad I was here, so that I could underscore, this is provisional relief, okay? This is, not a total relief, and I apologize if I, didn't adeptly word that in our application material that we submitted. So what we're asking is that you waive the sidewalk requirement that was a part of what was drawn in when we submitted the original site plan. I've examined the sidewalk and pathways prioritization committee recommendations, and you talked about them with the other application that was before you. Significantly, these are the items that I guess that we would look at. Number one, there isn't a sidewalk within, our estimation is 1.5 miles. I thought it was 2 miles, but the city limits is within 2 miles. There isn't a sidewalk in Union Township down Broomfield Road. And there are sidewalks at the First Community Church and at an apartment, and those happen to be in the city. But as far as the area around the golf course, there is not a sidewalk there. And to go to the north, you don't to get to a sidewalk until you reach Mission or High Street, M20. The significant side to this matter is multi-part, and that is number one, when we built a maintenance building, we didn't expect that there would be a requirement of a sidewalk for a maintenance building. And the requirements are that we get a site plan approved. We did that. And it included what is approximately a 1/2 mile sidewalk. So it's this yellow line that runs along the road here. Terry Somerville, Marty Fig are with me. They have been a part of the operation of Riverwood for their entire working careers. There has not been a fatality in the 1 mile area, and we can't identify one period, let alone one within the past year. The provisions within the prioritization committee recommendations include the fact that one, this is an area that has not had that type of a difficulty, and so we believe that it qualifies initially. Secondly, certainly this is a rural area in the first place. Across the street, and this photo doesn't show the Whitehead Farms, but Billy Whitehead has a farm that runs effectively all the way from Lincoln Road to Whiteville Road, and that is very rural. I think that's significant because when you're looking to place a sidewalk, the nature of the neighborhood becomes a primary consideration. Significantly, the committee identified the fact that there are certain areas that you would require sidewalks, and the identification by the committee was west, it was Lincoln Road, north from Broomfield to Pickard, and it certainly excludes this particular area. We have incurred would incur a significant cost to have to build a sidewalk all the way from the west line of what I'm going to refer to as the old course or the blue course, all the way across, and that's a 1/2 mile. A part of that effort includes an area right in front of the bowling alley or the recreation center. There's a pond here. And for us to be able to build the sidewalk there, I would suggest would require quite an engineering feat. And each of these items become significant when we're looking at whether or not this project should have or should require a sidewalk. Safety is a concern of ours also. If you look at the west end of the course, there's a hole that I believe is now called number 4, but when I was 12 it was called, I mean it's number 5 now, when I was 12 it was number 4. I put so many balls off onto the road here, it's not funny. The fact is that if you put a sidewalk between the road and the golf course, it would significantly impede the use of the golf course and would likely require a change in the course. I would suggest that it wouldn't be safe in the first place. With those considerations, we're asking that you allow us the provisional relief to not construct the sidewalk. And I understand that is, don't construct the sidewalk at this time. And in the event that there is a time and a place to make that change, then we certainly would comply.
Since you're a golf course and you're asking for provisional relief, would this include a ball drop?
You bet.
All right. Are there any questions for
It's out of bounds.
at this time regarding this portion of the request?
I have a couple
Um,
questions.
I'm sorry?
I have a couple questions.
Okay. Commissioner Buckley?
You mentioned the concern about, there was some concern for the safety, balls potentially going onto the sidewalk. What kind of liability does the golf course hold for passersby, that sort of thing, if somebody is struck with a golf ball?
Well, the golf course could potentially be liable. You know, you're asking me a question from my experience as a personal injury lawyer, whether or not that a jury would decide that there was actually liability there would be a jury question. But the fact is that we're concerned. We don't want anybody hurt.
Is there,
We don't want to set up a situation. That would be the concern, and that would be the argument by a plaintiff, that you set us up by walking us down the left side of hole number 5.
is there any change in liability if a ball were to strike someone who was not there to golf but using some other surfaces?
Oh, absolutely. If you're golfing, then you're engaging in a recreational activity, and you undertake a certain responsibility. If you're walking your dog
No, I mean if I'm going to dinner and I'm not golfing
and you're walking on
and I'm walking on the parking lot, I'm walking through the parking lot on the Riverwood property, is Riverwood, do I get the same protection? Am I treated the same way as a golfer, or am I treated as the same as someone who would be walking on the sidewalk?
Well, if you're engaging in recreational activities like golf, then you've undertaken or assumed a level of risk.
Correct.
If you're walking across a parking lot, in that situation, the golf course could be potentially liable if the golf course did something that placed you in harm. Now, if some wacky person got up on the driving range and hit the ball backwards into the parking lot, I would suggest that the golf course is not liable in that kind of situation.
So, has the golf course ever been sued for a ball strike?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Other questions? If not, then I know you'll,
I guess so. We have on your number 7 here, you said as an alternate, if the township is unwilling to grant temporary relief, suggests a hard surface path from the easterly to the parking lot, essentially.
Well, Alex, I didn't want to close out the potential for discussion here. Here's the reason I included that. This maintenance building is built over on the very east side of the activity. It really has nothing, I mean, it's the building itself doesn't really have an interaction with the rest of the course other than to house mowers and tractors and such things. And so we were looking at what the Sidewalks and Pathways Committee was actually considering. And I realized that it's actually a bit of a moving target, or it's still a matter that's a work in progress. But it occurred to us that the area from our east line over to the parking area is something that isn't obstructed at this point in time. The rest of the construction project from here around the pond, on the back side of what is number 1 on the blue, and then all the way down number 5. Those are problems. I mean, we have grading issues,
Yeah,
we've got
be
the
very
ditch, we've got
expensive.
ponds and so on. So we're requesting a provisional relief that is don't require the construction of sidewalk. There isn't a sidewalk within 1.5 miles. And I don't suggest that there's a need for a sidewalk here at this point. Again, I wanted to at least propose an alternative in the event that that we weren't granted the full relief.
Okay.
Other questions? Well, as I said, you're not going to disappear, so I'll thank you for your presentation, and we'll go ahead and take the matter up. And if we do have any more questions for you, we'll let you know.
Great, thanks.
So it's before us. We've got the 2 issues, the drive and the sidewalk. I don't know if you want to take them one at a time or how you'd like to do this, but I mean, this is a site plan amendment, so it's up to us to either approve it or not approve it, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Does anyone have any issues with the proposal to move the drive?
My issue would be lack of screening up against these first 3 houses. The plans don't show it. I don't know if there's vegetation between them or not on the driveway.
One of the reasons I asked about a gate was for a similar reason. Being that I live one subdivision over, from the first house in the subdivision, I get a frequent amount of turnarounds in my driveway. And I'm concerned about people pulling in simply to turn around in the evening and then shining directly into those first few houses every time they turn around.
You live in Green Acres?
No, the next subdivision over,
Oh.
McGurk.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, that would be a recusal, wouldn't it?
You can try to, can you zoom in any more on that, or?
It could be screened. I'm not familiar with the area.
Thank you.
So this is an existing, from Google Maps, you can see the trees. So we do have existing trees along.
The difficulty with mature trees is that they provide no screening down below for leaf-bearing trees.
True.
And so if you felt that the screening is an issue, you could require that additional screening be placed due to the residential property.
A wooden fence.
What's that
Is it
current,
appropriate to
what is that
comment
current
on
road?
comment?
Right there, Peter, is that a road? You put, right, yeah, right there.
Here,
driveway.
this is a driveway.
That is a driveway.
That's a
okay,
house.
That leads to that house.
Here's the first entrance to the resort from Broomfield Road. Their proposed access drive would be about around here. Proposed building about in this area. And so you do have a row of trees. Here's green acres, residential homes. The golf course does operate as a special use. In our special uses, it simply doesn't give you a lot of guidance. It just simply states miniature golf drive range shall provide screening as deemed reasonable and necessary by the Planning Commission.
Commissioner Cody?
So when he said the driving range, it goes across towards that, right? So the driving range goes like towards the trees,
Yes.
West,
correct?
east.
So if they add a road there, aren't they saying the same thing as the sidewalk where if a ball hits it, it's gonna go flying
I
further?
think you'd have to
Or-
hit it really far there.
But
It'd be
That's what they're
quite a
saying, like
distance.
towards the sidewalks too, though, right? When it hits something hard, it goes flying harder. Am I saying that wrong? I mean, do you understand what I'm saying?
This is heading west, this is east, north, south. The driving range, you'd be hitting the ball in which direction?
West to east, right?
No, I thought it was south to
Can I
north.
assist?
Oh.
If you can just briefly clarify the location of the driving range and which direction the balls fly.
If this is of assistance, and it's the same photo, the driving range area is in here. So the tee is in here, and the balls fly toward
I see.
what is the access road, okay? And what we've done is we've limited, use of that range so that you don't hit the woods off it. You know,
Okay.
and we tell people
Okay.
that don't be pounding the ball out there. It's still it has been a driving range for a number of years.
But saying that though, like you're contradicting what you're saying about the sidewalk, because if you're adding a road,
I see what you're
hitting balls
saying.
at it, it's gonna go further, as if it was hitting the sidewalk and going further and hitting
Well-
somebody in the head.
Um,
So I'm just saying you're saying the same thing but backwards, or, like the road,
Yeah.
you're going towards the road, like here, and it's gonna hit that road and it's gonna go towards these houses.
How far of a
Because it's gonna
distance
go
is that?
harder, so it's gonna go further.
I understand your concern. And what we have done is, again, we've limited the situation where we don't have people driving the ball that far. Over here, the hole runs to the west, and so it runs parallel to the road. And that's where that sidewalk would be.
Which direction
So
are they
if they're
hitting
hitting
from?
it that way, it's not really a concern of getting hit with the ball. Correct.
Unless you hit the ball off to the left, which happens regularly. So the hole runs, the tee's here and the green's here,
Okay.
okay? And so the hole runs east to west.
Okay, thank you. So further discussion on the placement or any other issues related to the access drive? I heard some question regarding screening. We've shown the photograph. We can see some trees there.
Again, just to point out, I don't know if we need screening there or not, but just to point out, there's a reason we screen with evergreens rather than leaf trees. leaf trees are bare and empty in the winter.
Is that what's there? I don't know what's there.
There's not evergreens there.
They appear to be deciduous.
Mostly what it is, right? It's mostly what it is.
It's virtually all evergreen.
I can look at it and see that it's not evergreens.
Those are on the roadside. Those are pines right there, and then there's a couple walnut trees. But as you go from south to north, there's a few deciduous that have creeped in. The rest of them are solid evergreens. Right there is where the evergreens are. There's a few that have creeped in.
What are those
but
poles?
The rest
Is
of
that
them,
light?
the vast majority are evergreens through there.
Hmm.
It's a little hard to tell from that view what those trees are.
Is that the property line where them fence posts are at?
Yes.
No, that's actually about, right around 20 feet to the west of the property line.
Okay, so it's
Property
20
line
feet.
sits back.
I just don't want the residents' trees to be
No, they
your
wouldn't be-
screening somebody else's property. Say the tree falls over from the wind or something, and then their screening's gone because you haven't put any up.
When I visited the site, and the owner can correct me if I'm wrong, but these poles are holding up a net that
Okay.
Right,
Yes, that's
driving
correct.
range.
I think
So the
I'd
drive's
have to agree with Alex that there might need to be a little bit more screening down where to protect from headlights, where the new turnaround access is and right at the building. So it looks like they addressed most of the screening, but there's a blank spot, about at the southern point of the building, and then I'd like to see a few more trees down at the turnaround to try and absorb some of the headlights as they turn around.
Can I make a comment on that?
This isn't an open deliberation at this point. This is,
I think we're still discussing. We haven't even reached any consensus yet, so I want to hear what other commissioners think, anyone who hasn't spoken yet or who's deliberating on this issue.
One of the things that I'm wrestling with is, because I think we're focusing on what might be the exception, not what's gonna be the norm. And it sounds like, whether we're talking about turnarounds or whatever, it's not a road that's a thoroughfare to anywhere. It's not a public road. It's a drive, if you will, that takes you to a destination. So, Mike did mention that early mornings, there might be trucks up there, but I don't see anything up there at night. There wouldn't be any reason, so I guess it doesn't appear that it's gonna be hazardous in any way in terms of light pollution and that type of thing into Green Acres, but, it looks like it's pretty, looks like it's screened pretty well, but I don't live there, so I don't know, but from just this vantage point, it looks pretty screened.
my concern with screening really only lies in the first 2 to 3 houses. And again, there's a reason why my concern is if there's turnarounds, it's gonna be just like I see probably happens on Green Acres, just the way same thing that happens at McGurk. People pull right up, they back up out in Broomfield, and they go back the other way. And so that's why I was concerned about some sort of screening or potentially a gate or something that would keep people from shining in the first couple of houses. I would tend to agree that it's going to be an exception. Any further back than that, it would probably be, if it was the public, it would be certainly an illegal activity if they were going any further back than a turnaround. So my only concern is those first couple of houses where you could have general public turning around.
Well, I know that's the question about the distance between this new road and the entrance into the resort that takes you to the bowling alley and the restaurant. If I'm driving down the street now, I'm gonna go into that lot and turn around, not this little skinny little service drive. More importantly, if we put a gate there, have we unintentionally created another hazard because the gate doesn't open itself. So you're gonna have to pull in or pull over one side of the, to be able to get into the gate. Unless it's left open all the time, then it doesn't serve the purpose that Brian mentioned. So, you know, I don't know, it could happen that people pull in there. There's a better alternative that is visible because the message board is there that's well lit, that shows you that that's the entrance. So if I'm driving, I'm looking for
The first right.
I'm looking for somewhere to turn around without somebody hitting me from behind or doing it, because that's gonna be dark. That's not at night. That won't even be very visible because it's wooded enough where when you're coming from east to west, you probably wouldn't even see that road until you passed it.
I would think.
Because there's trees there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the entrance to this service drive going to be marked in any way, like a do not enter sign or private drive sign or reflectors, anything?
We could certainly do that.
Well, what was your plan now?
The plan was not to mark it so as to not designate it as someplace that people would be coming in. But we certainly could, construct a do not enter sign or a private property sign, kind of thing to hold people up.
Right.
Again, it's simply not something that we were expecting we would have public traffic on.
All right. Thank you.
I think that's even further underscored by the fact it's gonna be, I thought it was gonna be a paved road. And when it was mentioned it's gonna be a gravel or dirt road, then again, I mean, there's a huge parking lot that's very visible. So if we're talking about turnarounds, because it seems like that's the issue, that somebody might pull in there to turn around, there's an alternative that's more visible than this road that's gonna be actually, when you're coming from the east to the west, I don't even think you're gonna see it until you're past it. And then you got an alternative, which is a big parking lot that you can turn around in if you're lost.
Yeah. It's not going to be wide enough to turn around except to go on the grass, and which is going to be undesirable for everyone. So I'm sure it wouldn't be someone's first choice, but then who knows?
Oh, and that's what, 40 miles an hour? Is that excuse me.
That is as fast as you can
the
get from
posted
Broomfield,
sign.
from Lincoln.
Now, obviously, people slow down a little bit because you got to, really.
I'm not. I mean, I expressed a concern about screening. I'm not horribly hung up on this. If there's not a desire from the Planning Commission to deal with some screening, I was only expressing a concern.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I heard it from a couple people, but I just want to, it's obviously it's our decision. So
Sure.
if someone feels strongly they should speak up. So once again, any issues related to the service drive or the access drive that people want to, either make a condition or just any concerns at this point.
Just
Mike?
clarification from what Pete said at the beginning, and that was to have the road commission approval. It was based on this plan that we're looking at, right? And this is the plan that the applicant's been reviewing with the road commission that we've been referring to, that Pat has seen this actual plan.
I thought he requested a new plan be submitted to him.
That's what got me thinking.
And so what it is the Pat has reviewed a plan that did not have the drawing drawn, or the what is referred to as the driveway opening on C1. The driveway opening, the plan that he looked at was not drawn correctly. They've placed that drawing correctly on there. Pat has not, though, reviewed that new drawing corrected plan. There is also, which I forwarded on to the engineer, and so the comments that Pat has is see attached drawing of drive detail requirements, need MDOT B2 curb with HMA or concrete entrance for the surface. Also, he has a comment, entrance location curb radii must be within the property line limits extended to the center line of the road. And so those comments have been forwarded to the engineer architect. They were able to make, before tonight's meeting, one of those corrections. And so if we approve, I'd recommend that both of those modifications be made and that the road commission see them and approve that plan.
Thank you.
And you would have a copy of that on file here then too, right?
Yes.
All right. So are we good on the drive? Hearing none, then no comments, then we'll move to the sidewalk. So you've heard the discussion from the applicant. You're aware of our earlier discussion. The floor is open on the issue of the sidewalk. I'll remind everyone that when this plan came before us last October, the prioritization plan did not yet exist. That was a factor, I think, in our discussions, at least the way I remember it. But in any case, it does exist now.
So I can go. I have some thoughts.
Commissioner Buckley.
Well, first and foremost, I mean, we're all aware that this was in front of the board. I think within a year. I think we decided on this in October of last year. Frankly, I'm not quite sure this is in front of us again. We've already made a decision on this. I'd point out that the sidewalks prioritization policy, number one, is not retroactive. Decisions that were made prior to the adoption of this by the Board of Trustees are forward-looking. We're not going backwards and revising based on the introduction of this policy. I would also point out, as we look at this, that this is that any relief that may be considered as a shall issue, or as a may issue, not a shall issue. As we look at those 5 exceptions there, even if if any applicant were to hit all 5, the Planning Commission still has within its authority to say, but we still want a sidewalk. It's not a must issue type of relief. Generally speaking, I tend to disagree with the defense that's been given. I don't think that anything has changed from last year. I will say specifically as it relates to the policy, the criteria for granting the relief of sidewalk construction, probably one of the ones that I find most alarming, and frankly I'd like to be on record for stating my objection to, is the notion that someone must be injured, critically injured or killed, before we'll consider requiring a sidewalk in any given area. I cannot support that criteria, and I probably never will. I don't think that should be a prerequisite for a sidewalk. I don't think that in terms of the concern to the public, I think there is a greater concern for the safety there. I'm the first road on McGurk. I'm the first road on, or first house on Broomfield. I see joggers, bikers, walkers every single day. And to suggest that this wouldn't be used is just false. So at this point, I'm not seeing anything in terms of the justification that's been given that would change my mind at all from what the decision that was already made last year.
Okay. Other comments?
I agree with him. Pretty much everything he said.
I do have one question. Is the building being used currently? it's built.
At this time, to my knowledge, the building is not being used yet.
Is the building being used currently?
The office area is not being used, the area around it is being used, but, the structure itself isn't.
No,
isn't
no
housing.
equipment's being stored in there?
No, I don't believe so.
Do they require, based on the fact that the existing plan had the sidewalk, do they have to build the sidewalk to use the building at this point? In other words, does the whole thing have to be completed for it to be approved?
Based on what was approved last October, the site plan would not be final until the sidewalk was constructed.
And is there's an occupancy, there's a requirement that be finalized in order to fully utilize the project?
I believe so.
Okay. Any other commissioners want to comment? I mean, I will simply say myself, I mean, I remember this discussion, and I think I was probably more or less on the other side of it. I agree that I'm not a golfer. I have mixed feelings about the whole flying golf balls argument. And I don't doubt that it would get used, but I think that, you know, the fact that the plan exists now and it didn't then, I realize it's not technically retroactive, but certainly they would qualify today, or at least they'd have a significant argument today. It's quite far away from any existing sidewalks. You know, I don't dismiss it out of hand, the argument that's being made.
And I would think that the cost could possibly creep up to that 50% of his maintenance shed to build a quarter-mile of sidewalk. Not
I'd be
that I
happy to
don't
look
want
at
to see
those.
sidewalk there. I mean, I was a proponent to see sidewalk because, you know, I like to get sidewalk where I can.
But again, none of these are, this is not a shall issue relief scenario. It's a may issue relief. One of the things that I would point out is that the Sidewalk Prioritization Committee themselves has made Broomfield to Lincoln and Lincoln North a priority for development, for sidewalk development. So that means in our community planning role, which is the charge of this commission, community planning, not just business planning, that means that in a community planning role, they have said now that what is it from Lincoln to Riverwood, to that border?
Half mile.
The priority
Half mile.
The priority plan shows Broomfield
To Lincoln.
to Lincoln, but from the city boundary. The priority does not extend west past Lincoln.
No, I understand that. But we have a prioritization now that is within a half mile, approximately a half mile of the issue in question. We have over 100 residences around that space. We have a multi-use facility. We have golf, dining, bowling, it's reception space. I mean, we're in the business of community planning. How can we not put a sidewalk to connect a multi-use facility to over 100 residences in Mount Pleasant?
And I just wanted to clarify to Commissioner Buckley, I didn't want anyone to think that the priority street extended past west of Lincoln Road. If it did, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Well, I agree. I understand. But what I'm saying is the prioritization goes right up to what we're talking about now. It goes within approximately a half mile of what we're talking about here. And if you go any further than that, we talk about going to the community church. There's 25,000 students and faculty on campus, not all of them, but a good portion of them who are into biking, into jogging. I mean, when I see joggers, they're all headed west. When I see bikers, they're headed west. I have no doubt that those folks are coming from campus. And eventually, at some point, we will have a connected pathway. Either today or tomorrow, we will have a connected pathway from Central Michigan University past Riverwood. That's an inevitability. So why would we waive that now when we have an opportunity to build our community for the future? I don't get it.
Commissioner Shingles.
Based on what Commissioner Buckley said, my thought would be, now that I've learned that all approvals are provisional, that any time the commission could say, time for sidewalks, as it builds from east to west, you know, it was pointed out that the first sidewalk, I see people, I live right here, so I come down Lincoln every day, and I see, as I turn, there are always people running, east and west. Some people walk, so I see that, but currently, there's not a sidewalk again until you get to the community church. So as that builds up, properties sell, new requirements come in. As it builds, then if this is a link to eventually, and I forget the subdivision as you turn the corner there, and that subdivision is growing, that this isn't a permanent relief. So at that time you say, build a sidewalk, especially as it's being planned. So I see it as, you know, if it were about being the first to be the catalyst for sidewalk building, that would be one thing. I don't see it as a catalyst, because it's currently kind of a sidewalk to nowhere. It would be a sidewalk to nowhere. And what comes to mind a bit is what we've experienced out on Bluegrass, with what we have currently with the credit union. And then there's this huge gap between there and you get to Indian Hills Plaza. So again, just a perspective. I wasn't here last year, by the way, so didn't have any input into this.
Commissioner Buckley.
I would respectively disagree on the notion that it's a sidewalk to nowhere. It's a sidewalk to approximately 100 residences and to a multi-use business. It is not a sidewalk to nowhere. Also, I would disagree. We could find ourselves in the same boat. I mean, we're talking about 50-year decisions here. By the time land turns over between here and Broomfield, when are we going to see? It's going to take decades to piecemeal that together. But if we have an opportunity to offer a catalyst and to create for our residents a pathway there, why wouldn't we capitalize on it now? Somebody has to start the trend. Otherwise, we'll be sitting here down the road, and economic relief is not a relief for a business. I mean, that's not the sole reason that we waive a sidewalk, we provide relief for a sidewalk. The economic burden, every single business that comes to us is going to say, well, I don't want to build a sidewalk because that costs me more money. I get that. But all we're going to do is find ourselves in the same position down the road where somebody's asking relief because nobody's got a sidewalk. And if we allow this one to go, it's because Riverwood doesn't have a sidewalk now.
I wish our sidewalks and pathway person was here tonight, but, because I'd love to get an understanding of where, just because we're having this discussion, we're talking about sidewalk, and there's no planned sidewalks out there now. What about pathways? You know, our committee hasn't gotten there yet, and that's connectivity. It seems more homogeneous to this business paved pathway. Again, I wish I could get some expert opinion, but I'm not sure we're allowed to ask that person.
Commissioner Darren, just for the planning commissions, just for their info, I personally would be supportive of considering a pathway if that was presented to us. I think the important thing is to be able to get people off the shoulders of the road. So if a pathway is more feasible economically or, you know, from a construction standpoint, I'd love to look at a plan for a pathway. But if it's this or nothing, well, that's where I'm taking my stand.
Commissioner Cody.
Okay, so they're just changing something in their site plan. So everybody that just passed a site plan that had to sidewalk and canal, I mean, us saying we're gonna waive it now, I mean, anybody else is gonna see this and say, hey, maybe I can get mine waived too, so maybe if we change our driveway over here or do this to change it just a little bit, they can come in and get their site, you know, I don't see any reason why we should waive it now. We didn't waive it before. It's just a driveway being moved from one side to another, or from the inside to the outside. I mean, if anything, they're gonna have less driveway to put on because of the driveway. Correct, or no? I mean, right?
Slightly less.
A little bit less. Just my thought on it.
I don't really like that this site plan got built, except for the sidewalk, and now they're coming back. I have a little bit of issue with that.
I feel like, to me, there's been a decision that was made, and now someone has come back and seen some new faces on the commission and asked for, well, can I take another swing at this? I don't think that's how the planning commission is intended to do business, is to have to reevaluate something every time something happens in the future, allowing an applicant to simply sit and wait for something to change and then come back and ask for a revision on this. We've had lengthy conversations about this, and there was no shortage of deliberation on this issue last year. No shortage. The issue's been explored top to bottom.
I think we know, I think I know unequivocally how two individuals feel. I guess I'd like to get a feel of where everyone is, because based on that, I think we can either just kind of move forward with a motion to approve this with the sidewalk and be done with it, or not. So Commissioner Cody, I believe, is not in favor of relief. Commissioner Buckley is not. Commissioner Shingles, I guess had the impression probably might be.
I'm uninformed. At this point, I didn't even know until it was mentioned that this was taken up last year at the length that it was. I had no idea. How would I have that organizational knowledge unless I went back and read the minutes from last October,
But in
which I
terms
did.
in terms of what's transpired tonight and where you are tonight.
Yeah. Well, I'm still being informed because I'm trying to understand the culture of decision making, and Commissioner Buckley's been very direct with that, so I have a better understanding of what happened a year ago. I didn't know how this got punted.
It wasn't a unanimous decision a year ago either.
Well,
I'm not going to
I'm glad
recognize you,
that,
so
'cause
please
it
sit
just
down.
sounded like it was.
Make a
I'm
suggestion about an adjournment of this issue. I understand that the commission is concerned about being fully informed. And so what I'd like to suggest is that you invite Jeremy McDonald, head of the Sidewalks and Pathways Commission, to come in here and inform the Planning Commission about their discussions and their recommendations. I recognize that this situation got hamstrung a little bit because of the recusals that were required by the ordinance, the conflict of interest issue. But I don't have an objection to adjourning this issue until next time and having a recommendation come from your Sidewalks and Pathways Prioritization Committee. That's what that recommendation is the basis of it. If you need to have more information about it, it's available to you. And we do not object to holding off until your next meeting and to gather that information. I apologize if I violated your rules for purposes of speaking, but I thought that it would be worthwhile to oppose this issue.
So in a sense, you're effectively requesting a postponement, or at least you're suggesting a postponement.
I think that it would be worthwhile for purposes of this committee, and so the answer is yes.
All right, thank you. All right, so you've heard from the applicant.
I think that there are some concerns, at least among some planning commission members here, as to how the pathways and prioritization went forward and was developed without any kind of additional review from the planning commission itself. I understand the process, and I understand that it was intended to go to the Board of Trustees. I personally don't think that any additional conversation with the prioritization committee is going to give us any greater insight as to whether or not we should have or should not have a sidewalk with this particular parcel.
Would it give us any better feel for where they are with regard to pathways? And whether, because I heard a few minutes ago openness to consideration of a pathway through that property?
Well, I mean, the sidewalk committee, when they're going to be looking at pathways, that they eventually will have a discussion on comparing pathways versus sidewalks, where maybe a pathway would be more appropriate than a sidewalk. But the policy that they developed for us and was approved as a policy by the Board of Trustees has given us guidance specifically for sidewalks. And so I don't think you should focus too much on pathways versus sidewalks. Right now we're just looking at the sidewalk. A sidewalk was proposed on the plan as required. Last year we had this plan before us. It was approved with the sidewalk be implemented. And I'm not trying to sway anybody on where they should vote. But just look at the policy, as Commissioner Buckley has stated. Nothing in the policy requires that if it meets 1 through 5, you shall grant relief. It's may grant relief. And I guess, as Commissioner Fuller pointed out, this relief has, or this request for relief has come post construction of the accessory building. You may want to look at, I guess, what conditions or factors have changed from a year ago that may warrant now a waiver, or not a waiver, provisional relief of the construction of sidewalks that was different now, didn't exist back then. The idea that there was no sidewalks that did come into factor a year ago. That hasn't changed. There still aren't any sidewalks. And so the idea of there being no sidewalks there is factored in. That was discussed. I would just note that we have a quorum. We need 5 for a quorum. We have 6. Any motion that ends in a 3-3 tie does not pass. If a motion is to approve, and you put the condition and you're satisfied that you approve the site plan with the new access drive on the condition that Road Commission see final plan approval, if they've met all the requirements, then the amendment should be approved, separate from the sidewalk issue. So if to get moving, unless the body, there was a motion to adjourn, postpone, table, there should be a motion to either approve with sidewalks as shown, or a motion to approve with provisional relief.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're at the point where we can have a motion. It can be any one of those 3. It can be a motion to postpone. It can be a motion to approve the site plan with the one condition of the Road Commission signing off. It could be a motion to approve with provisional relief of the sidewalk. I think those are the 3 options at this point.
I feel there is a safety issue down that west side of the property. When I drive coming east on Broomfield, I mean, I always look to see if people are on the tee box hitting my way. That is my only heartburn right there, is that last stretch.
The
from
safety
the
issue to a
resort.
pedestrian, you mean, or?
Our car?
As a car, when I'm driving that way, I look to see if anybody's teeing off to see if their ball's going to come in the road and hit the vehicle.
Now imagine going infinitely slower and still looking.
Yeah. I think there's a safety issue going west of the resort now to the west property line.
So
Maybe because the golf course is built too close to the road. I don't know what it is, but there is a concern of mine there.
that a pedestrian could be struck by a ball.
What about cars? I mean, you're saying
It's
the same thing
possible.
about cars, so it's
Yeah.
like, you can't waiver a sidewalk just because something's gonna get hit by it. You know, I'd rather be walking down the sidewalk and actually seeing it, cause you can move, then it
And you don't
smash into
see a
my
flying
car,
golf
and then you
ball.
smash into something else.
No, but you do see somebody at the tee box.
Yeah, that too.
And you do, and when you're walking past a golf course, it would be reasonable for a human being to pay attention to the fact that people are golfing. I would be curious, I don't think there's any answers to it, but I'd be curious as to how many walkers on the actual golf course have been struck. Do people get struck frequently on the golf course? I don't know.
If I'm playing.
I've been with people that have been hit.
Sure.
Yes.
The biggest
But I can also say that they're 20 feet up in the air, if you know where to look. On the curve there, 20 feet in the air, there's scars from a car that hit the tree that high in the air. And that's how fast people come down that road. And I'd rather take my chances with a golf ball than I would 2 tons of steel.
Or a question I guess maybe the applicant could answer. The golf course has been there for quite some time. Has any automobile traveling down Broomfield Road ever been struck with a golf ball?
Yeah.
So it's not a safety issue then?
Commissioner Darren?
So, and this goes back to what Commissioner Buckley started out with, his line of questioning. If we require the client, or the property owner to put a sidewalk in, are we liable then?
I don't think anybody's going to give you that answer.
I know, but
The township is not required to maintain the sidewalk. It is the responsibility of the owner of the land.
Commissioner Cody?
This same issue came up with 2 boards. Both of them passed it. Like I said, they're changing a driveway from one spot to another. They're actually saving a little bit of money on adding the driveway coming out. So I don't see waiving it now when we didn't waive it before. That's what I'm saying. When 2 boards approved it with the sidewalk.
I would support his alternate as putting it on the east side of the property as a pathway, as a 6-foot asphalt paved pathway that he offered.
I like that proposal.
Gets rid of my safety concern going down the other side.
So a sidewalk down the one, but then a pathway on the other part.
A pathway from their new driveway to the first entrance into the facility.
I don't think, just to be clear, I don't think their position, as I understand it, is please give us provisional relief so we don't build any sidewalk, and we would be willing to create this pathway on that first 600 feet or so of the property from the service drive to the first main entrance heading west. I don't think they're saying we'll build the other part of the sidewalk, but we want a pathway here.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
I won't approve it waiving the sidewalk.
Okay, I'm just saying.
So I'm just saying,
I'm
we
just
passed it
making-
before, and I don't see us waiving it now, because then we're gonna have this issue come up again and again and again on things that we have waived, or people will be just changing it just a little bit, so they can come back and change it. That is my biggest point, or biggest concern, anyway.
At what point in the future would we prompt, which the alternative is not in front of us today, so we can't deliberate on that too much because that's not what's been proposed to us. But at what point, if we were to pursue that route, at what point would we prompt or necessitate a sidewalk in the future on the other side? I mean, I tried to do a search about golf course liability and stuff like that. If people get struck with a golf ball, I mean, I'm certainly no lawyer, and I think Google's not the only place you can look, but I didn't find any glaring examples of people suing a golf course because they got hit with a golf ball. I mean, there's. I'm not supportive of a half measure here. I tend to think we do it or we don't do it.
So the floor is open if anyone would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve it without waiving the sidewalk and with the building, or the road commission
commission.
approval.
I'll second.
So the motion is by Cody to approve the site plan amendment with the requirement that the plans have to conform with the road commission's requirements, and that she didn't say it this way, but that a copy would then be on file with the township, as well as that's how the project would be built. And the second was by Buckley. I want to ask Peter a question, which is, you mentioned about how based on, site plan amendments, if they meet all the quote-unquote legal requirements, they have to be approved. Does that mean everyone has to vote for them, or that the commission has to approve them? Because this is an odd one, because if you disagree with the decision regarding the sidewalks, you might be inclined to vote against it, but can you vote against it?
Ultimately, if the site plan meets the site plan requirements, we are obligated to approve the site plan with or without conditions as noted. The motion has been to approve the site plan without any relief of sidewalk. If this motion were to not pass, I would ask the board to make a motion to approve the site plan with some kind of modification or waiver to the sidewalk issue, so that the site plan, if it meets site plan requirements, is approved.
But wouldn't you potentially be in the same boat on the flip side if someone says that site plan requires, or the code requires the sidewalk, and they could then vote against it on the other side?
And that's why I noted we have 6 members. If we end up in 3-3 ties, no matter how you want to word the motion, all motions fail. Eventually we have to come to an approved site plan if it meets requirements. As far as the sidewalk goes, to meet requirements, it is shown on the plan. That's required, so that requirement has been satisfied.
Further discussion? There is a motion on the floor that we're going to be voting on.
So the addition of screening is not feeling very supported for the drive. Okay.
It was not part of the motion.
Correct, right.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion as stated? We'll try a voice vote first, and we'll see how that goes. All in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's 3-3. So I'm going to go ahead, because I think we need to make decisions on a board like this. My understanding of Robert's Rules of Order is that when a motion fails, an individual who voted against the motion may ask for a reconsideration. That's my understanding.
I can make a motion now, is what you're saying.
Actually, one of the three of us could make, well, yes, you can make a different motion if you want to do that, and I'll stand down if you want to do that.
Yes.
But I think we also can, any one of the three of us could ask for that motion to be reconsidered. But if you have a different motion, I'd say make it.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the proposed alternate to construct a hard surface asphalt pathway similar to those used on golf courses from the east property line to the east driveway to the recreational facility as suggested as an alternate by the developer.
And you would, in so doing that, you would also accept the request for provisional relief for the sidewalk at this time.
Correct.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
So the motion was by Fuller to approve this site plan amendment with the same road commission requirement that we had before, to grant provisional relief for the sidewalk, and to require a paved pathway to be run from the is it from the property line or from the drive?
East property line.
From the east property line to the first main entrance to the parking lot on to the west. And the second was by Darren.
So just to clarify, because we ended in a 3-3 tie, so that both sides of the issue understand, the alternate that Commissioner Fuller is referencing would be a 6-foot pathway constructed from the eastern border of the property all the way down westward to the first entrance of the Riverwood Resort, and that a provisional relief from further sidewalk construction from that point all the way to the western border be granted.
Yes, that was the intent.
So that, I just wanted, the motion is not to grant, for those who want to see a sidewalk or a pathway, this motion is not to grant relief across the entire property. This is an alternate, or you could say some kind of a compromise.
Is it,
Commissioner Shingles.
Just
So
one-
the motion's been made, it's on the floor for discussion.
Just want to know, what's the difference between a sidewalk and a pathway?
A pathway, I can get you the definition. According to our sidewalk and pathways ordinance, a pathway is considered an off-road, shared use, non-motorized plan or path, usually asphalt, separate from the public road, though sometimes in a public right-of-way. All cyclists, regardless of age, are encouraged to use pathways. A sidewalk is defined as a paved path, usually concrete, located in a road right-of-way but away from the actual road surface, and designed, constructed, and designated for pedestrian travel. While Michigan Law MCL 257-660C and 257-660D allows for travel on sidewalks and or pathways by bicycle, provided they yield to pedestrians and do not impede traffic by pedestrians. Adult cyclists are encouraged to use roadways or pathways as safer options. Also, minimum width for a sidewalk cannot be less than 4 feet. It states that a minimum width for a pathway to be not less than 8 feet. It does state there's somewhere we can rave the standards.
is it?
So I want to just make sure that I know the Planning Commission may modify these width and location requirements upon finding that another location would be more appropriate because of the location of utilities, existing landscaping or trees, the location of connecting sidewalks or pathways on adjacent parcels or other site considerations. So, whereas the ordinance states that the minimum width of a pathway is 8 feet, the applicant's alternate scenario or alternate proposal is for a 6-foot pathway. This body does have the ability to consider that in modifying it.
I don't think they suggested a width in there.
You didn't state it wasn't okay. So you had stated 6 foot wide?
No, I've just stated an asphalt, hard surface asphalt pathway, similar to those used on golf cart path.
So you didn't use the word 6 foot?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
I
I
thought
don't know
you
where I
did.
got that from. Okay.
You don't have a
6 foot
width
sound.
specified in your notes, do you? Okay. Commissioner Buckley?
Can we approve a site plan with a pathway that is not on the site plan? Can we approve that motion tonight if there was a desire to do so?
I would suggest that if you modify, if you do make that change, it's on, your motion would include 2 conditions. One, the condition that the changes are made and approved for the road commission requirement. And 2, the second condition, that a pathway be drawn, shown correctly on the plan, and constructed in accordance with the standards of the sidewalk and pathways ordinance.
So noted. I assume that that would be an acceptable,
So the plan would have to be prepared and submitted to the township.
Commissioner Darren?
So, and this was non-motorized use, so I would like to suggest some signage so we don't have golf carts utilizing this as part of the service drive. I think it needs to be defined.
So is it Commissioner Darren that made the second, supported?
Yeah.
And you made the motion. Do you accept the addition that some signage stating non-motorized pathway be included?
Yes, I'll accept that addition to my motion that non-motorized vehicle signage be installed along the pathway.
Okay. So the motion, does everybody need me to re-summarize the motion, or is everybody clear on the motion? Motion would be approval of this, of the plan with the pathway on that first part instead of the sidewalk on any of it, with some signage to indicate that the pathway is for, not for golf carts, non-motorized, I guess is the way to put it. And that the plans be amended to be correct to what's actually being built. Further discussion? I'll ask for,
Oh, sorry.
do you have a,
I'll only say that I would support anything that, in the form of a pathway, that gave greater, that covered a greater length of the actual property.
I would like it to extend all the way across the front part, maybe not wrapping the other way, and then I'd agree to it.
And I would even be willing to skip the pond, since walkers are probably going to not deviate into the parking lot anyways. But if it were to pick back up on the other side, I could be supportive of something like that. I'm not interested in a plan that only creates a sidewalk or a pathway for 600 feet.
well, we haven't voted yet, so
If he was willing.
we're
to
still at
amend
the
it.
stage, I suppose, where the motion could be amended.
But yeah,
I guess
if
I
you're-
would, I guess I would ask the applicant if what would be approved would be a pathway from your property line to that first entrance, skip the pond, and then start up again there and continue to the property line
With a pathway.
as a pathway rather than a sidewalk. Asphalt pathway.
Thank you, but that's not workable to continue to use the golf course over on what I'm gonna describe as the west side or west of the recreation area. There are 2 holes there. We don't have room, space, and availability to build cart paths or sidewalks on that side from the parking area west. So, again, thank you, but.
Okay. I thought your argument was going to be the safety argument again. Is it actually a room argument, really, more than a safety argument, or at
Well,
least there's a room
it's-
argument as well?
The safety safety argument includes the fact that, there's a green for number one on the blue, and the green is actually close to the road.
Okay.
See where the word Broomfield is?
Yeah.
Next one,
To the right.
to the right,
Yeah.
right there. All right, just above that, you see a lighter
Yeah,
there.
the green.
That's the green
Okay.
for number one on the blue. And to put a pathway between it and the road it totally changes the way that you can play that hole.
Hmm.
And then the same argument goes for the next hole that runs all the way along Broomfield Road. So we're not able to do that. Yes, we certainly can utilize the parking area, the driveway area that loops around the pond and around those trees. I would expect that if there are walkers, they would walk on that paved area. But when you get to the west side of the parking area, we can't do that.
But you would have to do that.
If we required it.
If a sidewalk was required.
Absolutely.
Which changes the argument about safety, right?
As soon as it gets called in, you'd have to do it anyways.
Yeah, so the alternate proposal is a pathway would be placed from the eastern border to the first entrance. Anything past the first entrance would be given provisional relief. However, do note that provisional relief is only provisional, and at the time that the relief was called in, a sidewalk would have to be placed for the remainder of the parcel.
Including the pond.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so we're back to our motion. It has not been amended. Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'm going to try a voice vote first. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed to the motion, please say no.
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 That's a tie. Okay. So, since we are tied and since we are at a quorum and all the people are here who are eligible to vote on this issue, I'm going to go back to what I said before, which is it's my understanding of Robert's Rules of Order that an individual who voted against a motion can ask for reconsideration of a motion. So I'm going to ask for reconsideration of the original motion, the one made by Cody, Commissioner Cody. Okay, because I intend to vote for it because I just don't think we should be hung like this. We need to move forward. We need to make decisions. I wasn't in favor of that decision, but I see valid arguments for that position, just like I see valid arguments for the position I voted for. So I will, I don't know exactly how to do this. I will, see, can't quote the Roberts Rules. I just know that a person can ask for reconsideration of such a motion, particularly if they're the person who voted against it. I don't think a person who voted for it can do that.
Does the original motion
Just
or?
have to be a revote of that motion.
Yes.
If you were to ask for that consideration, it was granted, yes, absolutely.
So are you saying because it was the original vote, the original proposal, and we were the three that
I'm
voted no?
saying my understanding is that any one of the three of us could ask for reconsideration of that. Just like any one of the three of them could ask for reconsideration of the one we just voted on, which I don't think they're going to do, but they could. So, I'll do that. I'll ask for reconsideration of the motion that was made earlier by Commissioner Cody and was seconded by Commissioner Buckley, the one that was previously voted on.
Do you have to make?
What I don't
Do
know
I have
is,
to make the motion again?
Do you have to make the motion again?
well, that's what I don't know.
Yes, that would be the, yeah.
So the motion is to reconsider the earlier motion.
Correct.
Okay, and that needs a second, and that needs to be voted on.
I'll
I
second.
think.
Well, you're the motioner.
Oh, I'm the motion?
I'll second.
I thought he was the motion.
Or are you making the motion?
Are you making the motion?
Yes, I'm making the
Sorry, I'm
motion.
confused.
Then you second it, just so we're not.
Then I'll second.
You
There you
can't
go.
make the motion. You can't make the motion to her motion. You can only recall your, or reconsider your vote. But the motion is still the motion. So you can't move on something that's already been moved.
So the motion moved by Cody, supported by Buckley. The chair is simply requesting a reconsideration of that motion.
Period.
So then at that point, we don't need a second. We can go into
All in
deliberation
favor
and
kind of
vote.
thing, or no?
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Do
all
we
right.
have discussion?
Yeah,
I
we
th-
can have discussion.
Yes, I think we'll have discussion. I wasn't sure what the,
Okay.
The mechanics were.
so yes, I'm asking for reconsideration of that original motion. Discussion.
Consideration of pathway. To meet the needs of the motion, 6-foot pathway. And also consideration of more screening at the maintenance garage and the turnaround.
It'd be me, right?
So clarify when you say consideration of the pathway.
So sidewalk, your motion was sidewalk, full distance east to west of the property.
Correct.
I would like you to consider a 6-foot pathway
For the full distance.
It's my
minus
motion,
the
right?
pond.
It's her motion, correct. yes.
Minus the pond.
section of the pond.
Would you be amenable to a pathway rather than, I'm assuming that it's construction, ease of construction and cost associated with the two?
I mean, I think that's what I asked, and I think the answer was that that green is too close to the road and there isn't room for it. That's what I
It's close
heard.
to the road.
It doesn't-
It's a sidewalk as well.
Well,
So it
But-
doesn't matter either or.
The argu- sorry.
Yeah. If the pathway is a better alternative,
The argument that I would make is that I don't see how it changes the play of the whole at all. People play around the pathways that are on the course, and the road is the definitive stopper. So, is somebody going to, if a golfer sees that somebody is actually walking past the hole at that point, are they going to pause for a second? Maybe. I don't see how having a pathway existing there changes the way you play the hole at all.
I'd like to keep my original motion.
we could have a different motion, correct?
I
That,
mean-
that calls for a pathway in place of a sidewalk?
but there has to be a friendly amendment to that motion, because our motion was,
Well,
You
or
came back to
I
us.
think, I think that could be, couldn't that be a whole new
Wholly
motion?
I mean, you can
Yeah.
make it a pathway instead of a sidewalk, but the original
full length.
amount.
it can't be a new motion until you act on the motion, because it's been seconded.
I mean, I'll agree to
So
the
you
pathway
can't-
versus
you
the
can't
sidewalk.
say A new motion, it has to be acted on.
Well, no, I mean, I asked for reconsideration of the existing
So
motion.
basically it would be, you've asked for reconsideration of a motion. Do you now want to retract the reconsideration and make your, a new motion?
Yeah, I would, if someone else wants to move the option that was just suggested, which is the pathway in place of the sidewalk, I will certainly withdraw my request to reconsider the original motion.
I mean, can we make 3 on the same one?
Would you,
Is that
would you
possible?
are you supportive?
I mean, I'll change it
Are
to a
you-
pathway on the original
Of a full-length
sidewalk.
pathway.
Yeah, a full-length pathway versus the sidewalk.
Sidewalk pathway is the same
Because a
thing.
pathwalk, I mean, it's the same thing to me. It's sidewalk, one's cement, one's
Actually, I
asphalt
like,
kind of thing.
I like the pathway better because it's more open to bicyclists.
Yeah,
And it gets the bicyclists off
wider.
the road
It's
as
wider,
well
yeah.
as the pedestrians.
but they would have to make a new plan for it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would have to show a plan with a 6-foot pathway, not a 4-foot sidewalk, and it would have to be constructed to the standards of a pathway, not a sidewalk. Again, I just want to note that the requirement is a minimum 8-foot pathway. However, the planning commission may modify these width and location requirements upon finding that another location would be more appropriate because of location of utilities, existing landscaping or trees, the location of connecting sidewalks or pathways, and adjacent parcels or other site considerations. And so instead of an 8-foot pathway, the reasoning you could use is that an 8-foot pathway would be too wide.
Be too wide.
And so 6 foot is the.
I'll agree to
yeah.
that. So the 6-foot
think
pathway
that
versus the
6-foot
sidewalk.
Asphalt pathway is gonna be more expensive than a 4-foot concrete sidewalk.
Do you think?
Yes.
Okay, so we stick to the sidewalk, or what do you want?
I just, we're making determinations and there's cost implications to it.
I only assumed that the asphalt pathway would be cheaper because that's what the applicant had suggested rather than just building a 4-foot sidewalk, even where they were suggesting.
He was trying to reduce it to 600 feet instead of 2,500
Correct.
feet.
No, I understand
It's
that.
cost savings.
Right, but if it's a cost savings to use cement versus asphalt, then why did he suggest pathway instead of sidewalk in the 600 feet?
Because it would be more,
I
it would
assumed
be
it was,
user-friendly for bicyclists and the people that were talking about being concerned walking and running and bicyclists on the road. That's what he's been hearing
right.
all evening.
right, but why suggest a different material than pavement, or than cement, a sidewalk? My assumption was that it was cheaper.
Cost, but
But if it's not
thank you
cheaper,
for your expert
Right.
opinion.
It
It's
would
not
be the
cheaper than-
reduction in length is his savings.
right.
I mean, we can make it with the option of sidewalk or pathway.
Well,
A
we-
6-foot pathway or a
you-
sidewalk,
You have to let them
in
know
that
which they're.
spot.
Yeah, you,
Right.
well,
whichever
I mean,
one's cheaper.
you have to let them know what they're gonna build, and then they'd be required to show it on a plan, and they'd have to build it. So, right now, Chair Squattrito has indicated he'd like to reconsider the motion made by Cody and supported by Buckley. Either we're gonna call for a vote of that reconsideration, or we're gonna have, or the chair will have to retract that, and we're gonna have to come up with a new motion.
Let's just go with the original one, I think.
So, right, so I'd ask,
What do you want?
the chair made the reconsideration. Would you like to reconsider this, call for a vote, or retract and someone make a new motion?
Well, hearing that the pathway would be at least as expensive as the sidewalk, it doesn't sound and it doesn't sound like that would be an attractive option for the applicant. I might like it better, but I think probably we're back to the original motion, so I think I'll say that we'll revote on the original motion, or I'll request that. Any further discussion on the original motion? All in favor of the original motion by the Cody/Buckley motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4 votes to 2.
I have to get conditions straight on this one. I've got 3 different motions. Right, the original one right here.
Okay, so we are going to, we still have one business item, so don't go away. We have a public hearing for a special use permit, 2018-05, park and sell operation on Mission Road. Applicant is Mac Enterprises LLC, owners Mike Klump. Address is 5450 South Mission Road. I don't believe they are here, so I'm going to ask Peter to introduce the topic, and then we'll move to the public hearing. And did everyone come back? Well, okay, she stepped out, but our folks came back, so we appreciate that.
So tonight we're going to hold a public hearing for 5450 South Mission Road. Applicant Mac Enterprises LLC, Mike Klump. the request is a special use for what they described as a park and sell operation. It would give the applicant the ability to sell used vehicles or vehicles and farm equipment. The designated area that they propose to sell, replace, for sale, they have sketched out the portion of the property that they plan to use. The entire parcel is larger than that section, but this is the section that they would be proposed, creating a hard surface to place vehicles and farm equipment for sale. If approved, a site plan would still be required for approval of the use. The site plan would show this area designated as the area to be used. The remainder of the parcel would not be able to be used for any kind of sale of vehicles or farm equipment unless the applicant were to come back to the Planning Commission and request an amendment to the existing special use if granted. And so that is that's what we will be holding a public hearing for tonight, is the request for a special use to sell vehicles and farm equipment at 5450 as shown, designated area on the parcel.
Okay, thank you. Any clarifying questions for Peter before we proceed to the public hearing?
Just one is that building that says 5450, that's part of this whole parcel? Is that when he says there's one building? Okay, so I would just need to have that, I just wanted to make sure that that was parcel that I was looking at.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's the property line, I believe, is the green on the one of those sheets. So
I don't see green. I only see blue.
It's not that's about 2 sheets down from that.
So as you can see, the parcel that's in question, 5450, the entire parcel is shaped as shown above.
Oh, okay, I see it.
5472 is down here. They sketched what I'd say the northern eastern portion of the parcel.
Okay, thank you. I see it now. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we'll proceed to the public hearing. As Peter indicated,
Is the
No.
applicant here?
I'm sorry?
Is the applicant here? Do we-
The applicant is not here. When I talked with the applicant, they expressed that they would have a representative here. They are not here tonight.
They're not required to be, although if we have
They're not
questions for
required.
them, it may make it a little difficult. So as Peter indicated, notice was published in the paper. Property owners within 300 feet were notified. Happily, that doesn't include any of us, just for the sake of consideration. And so, as we do normally with public hearings, we'll give everyone who wants to speak a chance to speak. If everyone has spoken and someone wants to speak again, we'll consider that. We ask you to give us your name and address for the minutes, limit your comments to 3 minutes, and address your comments to the Planning Commission. The public hearing on special use permit 2018-05 is open at 9:35. Were there any written communications on this?
No, there was not.
And no phone calls or anything? So no communications of any kind?
I had a phone call communication, but as I tell anyone who communicates me via phone, if they do have any concerns, that they have to put them in writing or be present at public hearing.
Okay, all right. So let the record show that no public comments were offered during the public hearing. We'll go ahead and close that back up. So, because this is a special use permit, we have our list of criteria, which probably we all have memorized at this point, but I will turn to that. It's 30-2. Yeah, 30-3 in your zoning ordinance. I think what we did last time worked well. I'll read it quickly and then we'll ask for people to speak up with their thoughts and or concerns. Oh,
Before,
Mr. Milky.
before we do that, can I ask a question?
Please.
So, I'm hoping you can answer this, Peter. Just to reiterate what you said, on this drawing, the blue area, so just this one portion, is actually getting the SUP.
The parcel would be granted the SUP.
But it's restricted to this.
It's restricted that, now, what I'm recommending is we have to have a site plan approved. They're just showing us a sketch, a depiction of what they think they're gonna use. If that changes, what's shown on the site plan would be, that it would be restricted to that area.
Right, and so this building labeled 5450 right here,
Yes.
that's not gonna be part of the operations of, that's not gonna be like office for the retail sales of vehicles and farm equipment, right?
From what I understood from the applicant, no, that this would be the area designated, this building would not be part of the operation.
Part of that.
Again, for any kind of clarification.
Do we know
on
what that building currently is used for? Is that the one that
It's
we,
vacant.
It's vacant and for
Vacant?
rent when I was
Yeah.
down.
but it's
there.
a business?
It's zoned for business, from what
Not
I
a-
can tell, a vacant office.
Yeah, office, but it's not a home.
It's not a
No.
home. It's
Okay,
just kind
thank
of,
you.
kind of a storefront.
Used to be a heating and cooling
Hmm.
facility,
Okay.
shop.
Commissioner Buckley.
I'm just curious how we kind of, before we start the general requirements for special use, how do we deliberate some of the merits of these things? I mean, I know it's talking about a gravel parking lot. The last special use we approved that might be a little bit similar would be on Broomfield Road. We did limit the size, we limited the types of vehicles, that sort of thing. How do we discuss the merit of these criteria without an applicant here to answer questions?
Well, and so I would, we've opened the public hearing and we've closed the public hearing? Am I correct that we've?
I did close it.
Okay. So the zoning ordinance states, within a reasonable time following the public hearing, which we have conducted, the planning commission shall review the application for the special use permit, testimony received at the public hearing, and other materials submitted in relation to the request and make a recommendation to the township board approving or denying the special use application shall be in accord with the criteria for approval in section 30.3 and such other standards contained in this ordinance that relate to special uses under consideration. And so there is not a deadline that you have to act on, but it does state within a reasonable time. So
My only thought when I looked at, knowing that, after I looked at this and now knowing that the applicant's not here, my only thought is that wouldn't it be reasonable to table this or delay it or table it for a month and give the applicant an opportunity to be here to answer these questions before making a decision on what would be a permanent change?
I think we did that once with a special use permit within the last couple of years. I would certainly entertain a motion
So would
to,
it be a tabling or would it be?
I think
a
it would be a
postponement?
postponement until because normally you specify when, so postponement until the October meeting.
So I would like to make a motion to postpone until the October meeting, the review of this special use in order to give the applicant an opportunity to be present and answer questions.
I'll support.
So motion was by Buckley, the second is by Milky. This doesn't affect the fact that we conducted the public hearing. The public hearing was duly noticed, we conducted it, so we've satisfied our,
as far as what we are obligated to do on the agenda, we have satisfied that requirement.
okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say, to postpone this item until October, and Peter will make efforts, I assume, he'll communicate this to the applicant, make efforts to try to make sure someone is here. If someone's not here, then I guess we have the option to postpone it again, but I agree with the discussion. Any further? All in favor of the motion to postpone, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So to wrap up our agenda then, that was our last business item. So is there any other business that needs to come before us tonight? If not, then we'll move to extended public comment, the portion of the meeting where individuals are invited to address the planning commission on any item, whether it was on tonight's agenda or not. Give us your name and address for the minutes and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Extended public comments open at 9:41. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that back up. Final board comment. Any comments from board members?
I'd just like to make a comment about the sidewalk along the fifth hole. They expressed obviously a concern with safety. I drive up and down that road. I see in the ditch across the road, I pick up about half a dozen balls a month from there to give to my daughters so they can go hit golf balls. It is gonna be a safety issue if anybody's familiar with that. I know Commissioner Buckley lives near there, not sure how familiar he is with the blue course and that fifth hole. Where they're gonna have to construct this sidewalk is gonna be in shot pattern of somebody. Ironically enough, 3 people that recuse themselves have a ton of experience with ordinances and codes, sidewalk and pathways, and my golf background couldn't even make any comment on any of that stuff. So, not insulting anybody's intelligence here, but felt like that we're not able to even comment or do anything on something that was a major decision for the safety of other people. So, just duly noted.
Thank you.
I don't wanna see two on that same thing, you know, if there is a safety issue and then they have to put up a great big tall net in order to protect pedestrians, that would not look very well up and down through there.
I suppose, and I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, being the least informed, because I wasn't here last October, it was approved. That was the tipping point for me. So it sounds like it was vetted, and the right processes, and it was approved by this body, so to go back and undo it, I didn't think that was appropriate for me to do, because it was already approved. It was a modification to something else, and one thing really didn't have anything to do with the other, as I came on form, so, interesting.
Commissioner Shingles made my point for me.
Okay.
My only comment
Commissioner
is,
Webster?
cannot an applicant come in and ask for an amended site plan? And so they asked for an amended site plan. Doesn't an applicant have the opportunity to present to the commissioner an amended site plan? Even though we approved one prior, if something has changed and something has changed, do they not have the ability to ask for amended site plan?
I think they do, but you can't build the project, move into the building, and then say, oh, by the way, I don't really want to put the sidewalk in here.
Correct.
But it was an amended site plan because they chose to make a change of a drive. And so with that, because something changed, they also are asking the commission to look at a change in what was decided then. And do they not have the right to do that? That's my question. That's all my question. I'm not debating. I could give you my feeling about what was done, but my question is, does not an applicant have the right to ask for an amended site plan?
Well, they did have the right.
They do.
today.
Yes, they do. So that's what they were doing.
Correct.
So it had nothing to do with what we approved before. It's what they're presenting now. Is it not?
Any applicant has the right to ask for an amended site plan, reconsideration, but at the same time, this body still has the right to rule in the same way. They can rule differently. As you said, you take whatever different considerations or modifications that have been made.
So then therefore, they had the right to come forward and ask for a reconsideration. That was what it
And
was all about.
the
Doesn't
right
matter
would've
what we
been-
did before.
The right would have been more appropriate before they built out the rest of their project, yes. It's not to say they don't have the right now, but they built out, they could have come back the next month with a new site plan. They chose not to, they waited a year.
Well, they did, because they asked us to review it, and they didn't have all the appropriate requirements, and so we had to postpone it, so they did.
He means
No.
like last November,
Last year.
December.
We approved a site plan, they could have come back the following month with an amended site plan.
They were strategically.
They were strategically
Holding off
waiting.
for the
Yeah, I think we're
pathway.
speculating on
Yeah,
that.
we
but
don't,
whatever.
Commissioner Webster asked a question, I've answered it. I don't think we want to get into any more debate.
This is board comment,
I
not
agree.
question answer.
Any other comments? All right, well, thank you for your participation tonight, and we've completed our agenda, so we stand in adjournment until October.